Hey everybody, Cheryl and I are here in the Outer Banks, social distancing, and it's been a little while since we did a video, and so we thought we'd do it today. We thought we'd talk about oil and vinegar, and with both of those we'll make a vinaigrette, because I think everybody should be able to make a vinaigrette at home, because more than likely you've already got all the ingredients and you don't need to go to the grocery store. So let's talk a little bit about different oils that you probably have in the house already. So, we're going to start with canola oil. So mostly, we add that to baking and so on. We've got our peanut oil. Peanut oil has a slightly higher smoke point, which means it can get hotter. So when you're frying things in a pan, often it's good to use peanut oil. It doesn't give off a lot of flavor, so that's good. Next one, these are the two that we normally have sitting right here, and those are our day-to-day oils. This one is extra virgin olive oil. Again, we fry a lot with extra virgin olive oil, but it adds, a nice flavor to the food that you don't get with the canola oil or the peanut oil. This one next to it, I normally have some sort of flavored oil. Often we'll roast some garlic and put it in the jar, and so it's extra virgin olive oil that we flavor. What we've got in here today happens to be blood orange flavored extra virgin olive oil, so we'll add that to a vinaigrette or different foods. We bought some walnut oil. We don't use it a ton, but it obviously gives a nice nutty flavor. We've got some avocado oil. Has a nice flavor to it. This is just a homemade peri-peri oil. What?
Pili-pili.
Pili-pili, right. That's a different thing. Pili-pili oil. It's mostly paprika. What
and
else?
peppers.
And
You can use the Thai peppers, whatever you really want to do, but it's going to give you some heat.
Yeah, some nice flavor.
And if you're at home and you don't have Thai chili peppers,
Yeah.
feel free to use red pepper flakes. Just
Sure.
be liberal with them.
That's actually what's in here. So a lot of paprika and red pepper flakes. Sriracha oil, so obviously nice and spicy. Add that in a lot of Asian foods. All right, so those just happen to be the oils that we have today that are sitting in our pantry. And we're going to use some of those to make a vinaigrette. So now, moving on down the line, we've got our vinegars, and then ultimately our citrus. Very similar to vinegars, just not vinegar. Oh, wait a minute. There's one last one. So we've got some sesame oil, so roasted sesame oil. You could use it in a vinaigrette. We normally use it if we're making fried rice. If we made rice for some reason, we have rice left over, the next day we often make fried rice. Toasted sesame oil is great in that.
And I would say use that sparingly if you do put it in a dressing.
Sure. Yeah.
It can be a little overwhelming.
You're definitely going to taste that sesame flavor, which is great, but like Cheryl said, don't overdo it. Okay, so now we're on to our vinegars. The easiest one, normally everybody's got apple cider vinegar. So this is kind of an organic apple cider vinegar. Has, that flavor that you're used to. We've got some sherry vinegar. We've got coconut vinegar. Probably our go-to. It's a little expensive. Well, this one is $6, $5.99 at the grocery store at the Harris Teeter. Champagne vinegar. So we use a lot of this. It's got a great flavor. We'll use this in the vinaigrette today. Champagne vinegar. We've also got white wine vinegar. Probably should have put that down at the end. And red wine vinegar. These are go-to. You should always have red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar in the house. Red wine vinegar we probably use more than white wine vinegar. Great flavor. And then for today, we just happen to have some lemon, lime, orange, a lime that's mostly gone, sitting around, and then we've got some ginger. You certainly could have a vinaigrette with ginger in it. That sounds great. Today, I don't think we're going to do that. All right, so that's what we just have in our pantry. If we're going to go ahead and make a homemade vinaigrette with those, let me go ahead and grab a little bit of walnut oil and avocado oil. If we'll bring you down here. If I'm making a vinaigrette, normally what I would start with is a shallot. Turns out I didn't have a shallot, but in the pantry we had a Vidalia onion. So I'm going to go ahead and just chop up a little bit of Vidalia onion, super small.
Yeah, you want to make that as fine as possible. If you're doing a vinaigrette by hand, the smaller the dice, the better, because then you don't end up with a big chunk in your mouth.
All right, for the amount of vinaigrette we're going to make, that's probably plenty. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in our bowl. I'm also going to want to add some garlic, so I just have some. That's
the dishwasher.
the dishwasher going off.
Leaned into it.
Get rid of the rest of the onion here. We've got a little bit of garlic. I cleaned 3 cloves of garlic. What I'm going to do is just chop it up.
Yeah, but he's going to do my favorite trick, which I think we might have shown you before, but you can never see it too often. It always amazes me. I do not like to bite into garlic. Some people do, and that's fantastic. But it is just not my thing. I love the flavor. I just don't like to bite into it.
So you can see I'm just putting a little bit of kosher salt on top of the garlic. And now instead of just chopping it up, we're going to go ahead and turn it into a garlic paste.
The salt actually reacts with the meat of the garlic, and it just starts making it a paste. It's wet, but it also breaks down the salt at the same time. So you can get that as fine as you want to. Certainly feel free to leave a little bit of chunk to it. But this is how we kind of proceed on our vinaigrettes.
All right, so that's pretty good. That's quite a bit, but I like garlic, so that's all going to go in. So now we got onion and garlic. The next thing I would probably put in, eyes running from the garlic and the onions. I would put in thyme from the garden. Normally you have some fresh thyme growing in the garden, but I don't because we're quarantined. What I did have is, it's not all that pretty, but I found in the fridge, this is parsley. So obviously we've used the top of the parsley. We would normally save this to make stock with, vegetable stock. But there's great flavor in the stalks from the parsley stems. So I'm going to go ahead and take just some of that parsley.
And just notice Billy's really being careful holding his knuckles to the blade of the knife so that you don't, hopefully, cut your finger.
Okay. So now we have our parsley. I'm going to go ahead and add, we're going to start with some of the vinegars. We talked about the champagne vinegar. We want to do 1 part vinegar to 2 parts oil. So, I mean, we could use, a couple tablespoons to figure that out, but essentially, that's about half a tablespoon, of champagne vinegar. What was the other thing you wanted, Joe?
Oh, lemon juice.
So, obviously, great flavor. Lemon.
It adds a different type of acidity than vinegar does. Vinegar has more of, I always like to say it's more of a bitter type of acid, where a lemon or an orange is more bright, and it just affects different parts of the palate. I prefer lemon over lime in my vinaigrettes. Orange is my second runner-up.
All right, so it needs a little more champagne vinegar. I can just tell.
You kind of have to map it to how much of the onion, the garlic, and any herbs you might have put in there.
We've got a fair amount of salt in here because we had salt on top of the garlic. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of black pepper. And the salt we're using, obviously, we've just got straight kosher salt. We don't want to use our good fancy salt, the Malden salt, because that's, as we talked about in the salt issue, that's a finishing salt that we would put on top. All right, so now we're ready to start adding some oil. I'm going to start with really just a little bit of the walnut oil for flavor. Cheryl wanted a little bit of the avocado oil.
I like the viscosity or the mouthfeel that avocado oil gives you. It's just so smooth. And I know you're probably thinking, well, all oil is going to be smooth. I guarantee you it's different. You kind of have to just test it out.
So now what we want to do is we want to finish off, we mentioned, 1 part vinegar, 2 parts oil. We're obviously not at that point yet. We want to begin to emulsify the fat, the oil, into the vinaigrette. The way that I was taught how to do that is with a whisk. We take our trusty extra virgin olive oil and we begin to drizzle that into. You want to come in so we can see it? And you can see already it's starting to get thicker. And we're slowly emulsifying that oil into the vinegar and the parsley. Now we've got a nice thick vinaigrette. Now we're not quite all the way there yet. We could add some more oil. That's the traditional way, the handmade way. The other way, which is a lot easier, and you can cheat, is to use one of these. So we've got a hand mixer, an immersion blender, they often call it. And when you use one of these, I can go ahead and add all the oil I want, and then use the power of the mixer to mix everything up.
It's going to be noisy. Boy, can you smell that garlic? Woo-hoo.
All right. So, now we want to taste it. Garlic, you're right.
How's the salt?
Salt's fine. Normally I wouldn't put the spoon, I just lick back in there, but it's just Cheryl and I, so.
Ooh, that's yummy.
Good?
Really fresh.
Yeah. So then what we do, I've got one here, but up in the cupboard I've got a whole bunch of these. They're super cheap at Walmart is where we often get these, or
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon works. For the vinaigrette, since it's got some chunky stuff in it, went ahead and cut off the top. And then we'll just pour this into our
One quick note, if you do taste it and you don't think it's salty enough, add a little bit, don't add a lot, and give it time by continuing to either use the whisk or the immersion blender to make sure that that salt melts, and then taste it again. The reason is salt will just sit there, and then all of a sudden by the time it does melt, then you've added too much.
So that will stay emulsified like that. It won't separate if you've emulsified it right. If it separates, it's no big deal. Just shake it up before you use it. But that's a great homemade vinaigrette. All right, enjoy. See you guys.
Bye, y'all.